Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Super Pros Bros. I'm Player 1, Ike, and with me today
is Player 2, Eli.
Hey! How's it going?
Good to be home after the holidays. It was a good time traveling, seeing people, getting delayed in airports. Always fun.
Do you have a protein shake to get back in the swing of things?
I'm not answering that.
Perhaps a bro-sickle to chill off?
Alright, we're gonna have to bro out of here pretty fast.
No, my bro sapien, stay with me.
He's up there, Professor.
No, I was going to use that one. Well, like you alluded to, we got to see each other in person for the holidays. Whoop, whoop.
Oh, yes.
Couldn't record it because of the awesomeness that would scald your mind, guys.
Okay.
However, what we did, well, in person, is we watched Ted Lasso, all of its season 1 goodness.
It was delightful.
'Twas.
I feel like it's probably the most perfect adjective for that show. Is just kind of delightful.
It really is it doesn't do anything amazing, but what it does perfectly. And very, like you saying, delightful, like very serene. It's like the perfect cup of tea, which fits well in the show because it is set in Britain. But it really just goes down smooth. It's just, that's nice.
Yeah, it doesn't try to be more than it is on the surface. It's nice. It doesn't try to be dark and grim and gray. It's like, fuck that garbage. Like we're just here to have a good time. And
it has its moments where it does get personal. I don't think we want to like gild and kind of G-rate this too much. It definitely has depth. But yeah, I agree with you. It knows very much not to tell other things what they should or shouldn't be, but it definitely knows its lane and it never tries to deviate from it. It always is very self-aware. And which I think
what I mean is like it doesn't try
comedy.
to do like what Batman will do, for example. Or tries to get giga dark and gritty, and it's like, how about we chill? It's like, no. This is first and foremost a comedy. And yes, there are very real moments that humanize characters, but by and large, it's a comedy. Have some fun. It's lighthearted. It's great.
Yeah, it's a great comedy. And one of the other things that I love, and I'm curious to see what you thought of this, was its lack of mining, if you will. Most traditional kind of comedies and sitcoms will take a normal thing that happens and turn it into a series arc. They will take miscommunication, an odd text, and they'll turn it to a whole entire episode. Every single one of these problems is handled by characters that are uniquely different, some of them deep, some of them very surface level, and it has the characters approach them as a human being would, whether it be miscommunication, tough feelings. There isn't this whole, like, will they, won't they pull that seems illogical. Yeah. To me, anyway.
It does feel like it avoids drama for drama's sake. Mm-hmm. Like, because there are absolutely shows that it's like, can we just be done with this? Like,
Friends, the whole fucking show is this.
I love Friends, but oh god, it is a bad offender.
Yeah, it's you. If you go to Friends for the writing, I'm sorry for you. You should stop listening to this podcast. Sorry, that's not that show is not for the writing. No. It was cute. It was funny.
You watched it because it was funny and because they had good on-screen chemistry.
Yeah, absolutely agree. But the writing in that show is offensive in that it's just like, who is watching this show thinking, "Oh yeah, I would totally do this."
It's not smart writing.
It's not smart writing in that regard. Granted, it's a sitcom. There is some suspension of disbelief, but the amount of times that characters couldn't have an adult conversation, being 30-year-olds who lived in New York, had difficult lives, didn't have all that time in the world. It's like, who the fuck are these people?
Yeah, it's
such an unrealistic expectation.
I think it's totally fine. Personal opinion, like I think there's totally times where you can just kind of glaze over stuff and just like you get kind of X number of passes to kind of write nonsense like that, where it's like we could have had an adult conversation and then we wouldn't have this plot point going. And occasionally you can just like, just cheese it. But it's like, you can't do that 45 times in a row. There's just a point where it's like, all right, this has got to stop. At some point, someone would get frustrated, like, can we just fucking sit down, please?
Yeah. We have a conversation or a fight or something.
Anything.
Like, it doesn't always have to be smooth. One of the nice things in this show is, for the most part, it's smooth. The characters act like adults. But there are times that characters get angry at each other and they voice their opinion. Shit. Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense. There are characters that deceive one another. It's not, I don't want anybody to think that, I mean, the show literally starts off this way. It's not a particular spoiler. Also, the series is a couple years old now. But it starts off with the main character, or one of the main characters, the reason they hired this American coach for their English football club is to hurt somebody that hurt them. Yeah. Is to sabotage the team so that they can get back at the person that was cheating on them, which was the original owner of this club. Very deceitful, very underhanded. It carries for a fair amount of it. It's a big part of the first season.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it sets up the show.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, so it's not like all fine and dandy. There is strife, there is conflict, but it can still be handled like adults and in a way that is very palatable and keeps you engaged without, like, there's no freneticism. There's no like, oh God, what will happen? There's no draw in like that kind of like stakes being raised. It's just in the perfect timing, the amazing editing, the stupendous writing, and the great comedy that Jason Sudeikis brings to the screen as the titular character Ted Lasso, which, holy dad jokes, Batman. Jesus Christ.
It is remorselessly optimistic and positive with his character to the point that it's frustrating at times, which I think is great because there's a lot of characters that call him out for basically being as frustrating as he kind of seems to a somewhat cynical audience. Mm-hmm. It's great. It's perfect. You're like, yes, I agree. Screw that guy. Yeah. How could he be so damn happy all the damn time?
Yeah, it's not this like Disney universe where it's like, oh, everybody's like this. It's like, no, he is an oddball. He gets called out for it, but he's not. One of the things that I appreciate, and that happens pretty early on in the season. Well, he's not only consistent, it's not naive and it's not an act. It is his person. If it was an act, it'd be a cool different wrinkle, but it's not, which is fine. Yeah. But like I think it's like episode 2, one of the characters comes and goes, look, this person's being mistreated by the rest of the team. You're the coach. You're going to do something. He goes, no. And he is not naive. He understands the world. He goes, look, if I go in there and do this, it will not solve the problem. It will only solve it when I'm around. I will become the policeman. It'll change the dynamic, and the problem won't go away. It'll just get swept under the rug until I leave the room. That's not going to solve that. That's not how this problem gets fixed. And the man is very smart. He's very calculating. He's annoyingly optimistic and like foolhardy, but he has depth. And I think that's one of the things that I really like is that even, I mean, obviously Ted Lasso has to have depth. He's the main character, but even a character such as him has depth, and the rest of the characters in the show, even Jamie Tart, who's one of the other kind of seemingly flat characters, has a lot of depth, even though he is a gigantic knobhead.
Gigantic knob. Just the worst.
Well, I mean that not only in his character, but also in his brain. The guy's fucking stupid.
Oh, yeah. Dense as a bag of rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, and by design. And you're kind of supposed to hate him. And they do a really good job making you kind of hate him, and then providing moments where you're like, wait.
Yeah.
He's not the worst.
Not only is he not the worst, you understand in certain circumstances why. There's little non-gigantic dumps of exposition that help you understand characters, and they come in moments where it makes sense. Again, this is like something we've hit on multiple times. It needs to make sense, it needs to be called for, and it needs to not be super long or super detracting.
Yeah.
But when it's done right, like it is in this show, it's a little bit, and you like, oh, and you start to understand this character. It's like when he talks about, there's an episode where he talks about
his dad.
Let's start seeing spoilers. Yeah, he talks about his dad, and it's like, oh, that makes it starts like this makes all the sense in the world.
It's starting to come together.
It's starting to come together.
One other thing I kind of liked, and I think kind of funny from a writing perspective, is that Ted Lasso doesn't swear in the show.
You noticed that
he swears twice in the entire first season.
And he apologized. Is it for one of them? I remember. Does he apologize for the other one as well?
He does apologize for both, actually. Well, kind of. Not immediately on the first one, but he apologizes later. for what happens.
Yeah.
But it's in Britain, and everyone else fucking swears constantly. One guy especially, and it's fantastic. It's just this weird foil that everyone else is just fuck, shit, and cunt. And Ted Lasso's just, oh, dang.
Gosh darn it! That's my favorite one, is when he gets angry at Rebecca the owner.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I hope you hate these cookies. But gosh dang it, they're the best ones. I nailed the recipe. So, like, that's his, like, most irate. It's like, oh, dude, you're the best.
I still think my favorite outbursts from the show definitely come from Beard. Who's, like, the perfect kind of quiet foil. Like,
yeah, that's also...
They
did so many great jobs creating foils, right? You have between Coach Beard and Ted Lasso, you've got somebody who's they gel well together, but at the same time they are opposites.
Yeah,
you know,
one
it's
guy
kind of like
can't stop talking, the other guy rarely talks.
Basically never talks. Their ideologies are predominantly in sync, but they still have things to teach each other and do for each other. It's a great and beautiful. I think it's one of my favorite. I wouldn't ship it because
That's
nah.
weird.
That ain't me.
That's not the right. It's not the right energy. They're just homies.
It really isn't the right energy. They are brothers from another mother, though. They are so just beautiful together on screen. And what's also great is they've been friends for over a decade. They helped write the show together, and you see every ounce of it in the characters they portray. It's so beautiful. But they are just like you're saying. They are so different. You know, soft spoken versus loud, and very energetic. And yeah, he does.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, the setup is they're talking about. They're talking about how many years
it's been since they've won it.
It's been so they've
at
won
away
at Chelsea,
the Crystal Palace.
Is it Crystal Palace? Yeah.
Yeah.
How many years has it been? It can't be that long.
1940.
Yeah, 1940. Just almost like a record scratch. I would love to go back and see if he if he moves the marker to the right, like one of those straight lines when a character hears a noise and wasn't ready for it.
And just our arm juts to the side, yeah.
Yeah. It just turns around and just offers Jesus Christ. He says it in such a soft tone, just he's letting the air out of his lungs if they were a balloon, just Jesus Christ. Just whoa.
It's completely blindsided.
Yeah, I just cannot believe it. And then on the other end of great character foils, you've got a perfect great character foil because of what they do and who they are and their interactions with their main love interest. Is you have Roy Kent and Jamie Tart. You've got this old guy, knows how it is, salt of the earth,
bit of a chip on his shoulder.
Big chip on his shoulder. Been around forever, knows respect, and also, is hard on himself and hard on others. And then you've got this guy who's, as Roy says, has a foot that's been kissed by God.
He's as arrogant and as self-centered as they come.
Yeah, and as stupid as could possibly exist without...
Stupid as a bag of hammers, but he is a phenomenal player, which is why he can get away with being an arrogant little shit.
Yeah. And having those kind of, not only having them play off each other, but their interaction points with differing characters and how they grow, progress, and change is just so tremendous. And another thing that just makes the show great. Another thing that's awesome is the person that they interact with the most is Kaylee, which is at the start of the show, Jamie's boyfriend. Spoiler alert. By the end of the show, Roy's girlfriend. Sorry, did I say boyfriend?
He's a boyfriend.
Yeah, girlfriend. She's more man than either of them anyway.
At times, absolutely.
But the way they portrayed that character, this is kind of one of the best things at writing, was setting up expectation and denying it, and not in a going the opposite direction, but going so if you expected them to go right, instead of going left, they went up. Or something like that you just couldn't even conceive of. So they have this character, starts off, and you think she's going to be this sex kitten. The way she's introduced, the way, her first lines as she walks in, and she goes, "Is everybody decent?" And she has her eyes quasi-covered as she walks into the men's locker room. And she opens them up, and they're all wearing clothes, and she's like, "Oh, guys." And she's pretending to be bummed. And you're like, "Oh, great. It's going to be this." yeah, it's going to be this one note thought, if you will, character. And it's going to be like, oh, that's really boring. But then as the show progresses, you learn more about her, and she's really smart. She's really interesting. She's really funny. She's not just driven by sex. She has a lot of respect for character, for honor, for commitment. And she's just, every character is like that. Any character that you're like, oh, well, I know this character within 2 seconds.
There's very few characters that are one note.
I can't think of a main character that you see 3 times that is one note, that doesn't have like a dynamic, a depth, any amount of change to them.
I'm going to say there's kind of some of the football players that you get like limited interaction with that are kind of one note.
Yeah.
But it's probably because they don't have screen time to make them more noted. But I don't think it's like a fault of, if you have 4 lines of dialogue, you have 4 lines of dialogue. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, you can't have depth when you don't have
the time.
Like any character. Yeah, it's like when you are just going to be your facade. Like if there's any 2-person, if a character is ever in a 2-person scene, they're gonna have depth. Just so tremendous.
I was say the only one who's got like some screen time that I don't think had a ton of depth is like Isaac.
He gets some in season 2.
Okay, I mean, I believe it comes later because they kind of set him up.
He has depth and change in season 1 too, because he starts off being Jamie's lackey. He's kind of roughing up Nathan and being a dick, and then he becomes the captain. And it's slow little changes. This is another thing that's really fun is like background little things. If like you pick up on them, like the first couple episodes, Isaac's like, yeah, whatever. I'm just like, having fun. And then Ted Lasso comes in and shakes things up. They see the way he treats Jamie, and he gets the progression. He starts to, pick up some Royisms, if you will, throwing a chair, breaking a TV, but being very soft-spoken, listening to direction, and being good at, like, ends up becoming, team captain by the end of the season.
I think that is my favorite passing of the torch, because it's just so understated and just never stop breaking TVs.
Yeah. Well, also, just you can see that moment a couple episodes before when he throws the chair into the TV, and everybody just kind of looks back, and he's just standing there. He's like, "Oops, isn't it?" He just says, "Oops, isn't it?" And then just like goes to sit back down, and Roy just kind of looks at him and goes, "Well said." And then just like go about it. It's like, oh, like there's little. It's so, for being so a character centered on a character who's so verbose, outspoken, and just kind of not the center of attention, but is basically the class clown if he understood how to get the homework done. The show has so much good nuance employed in character building and like showing change and like the dynamicism of these characters. It's so tremendous.
Yeah.
So this is normally where we would say something bad about the show, but I got fuck all to say bad about this show.
There really isn't much bad to say. Like, it's just doesn't really overstay its welcome. It doesn't try to be more than it's supposed to be. It stays. It's just good. It's just good. It's very pleasant. Don't go if you're expecting something life shattering or life altering. But this is
definitely the perfect show. I think this is my definition of perfection. Because it's something that you can watch at any time. You can be exhausted, watch it and laugh. You can be looking for art house, deep theory, kind of connective tissue, that kind of highbrow medium that film can be. And you can still get lots out of this. Showing good writing, showing realism. This show has that. It's like, there are so few shows that I can say, yeah, it doesn't matter how you feel, turn this on. And like full stop. It like literally whatever you're in the mood for, Ted Lasso is gonna fit. Unless you want to see shit blow up and people get shot, you probably can watch Ted Lasso and get what you're looking for.
Probably not gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't think there's many shootouts, and other than on the pitch. Actually, I don't think there's a shootout in the whole entire season. Now that I think about it, it's kind of funny.
No, not like a proper one.
Yeah. Anywho, so yeah, highly recommend going and checking out Ted Lasso.
Yeah, absolutely. It's second for me. Just go watch it. What are you doing? Just go watch it.
Yeah. Finish this podcast episode and
then go watch it.
Lasso. This kind of reminded me actually of another TV show, which while I am recommending Ted Lasso, I'm also going to recommend Marvelous Miss Maisel, which I think the new season is either coming out or just came out. I'm very excited
The
because
third season,
I
fourth.
think it's the fourth
Okay.
now.
Because I know Marvel's
Yeah,
Maisel has been going for a little bit.
yeah. So the first season, she's getting on her legs. Second season, uh, she's at. Yeah, I'm remembering it by setting. So the first season,
Hmm.
she's in New York. Second season, she's in. It's this weird summer campy thing in like northern New York. It's the something crap. And then the third season, she's on the road with Shai Baldwin, and especially in Las Vegas.
Okay.
So
I've only seen like the first two episodes of Marvelous Miss Maisel. So
I thought we raised you better than this.
yeah,
I don't know who the
well,
we is in this
I was
circumstance.
just to say you're not our parents. That's weird.
I was talking about me and you. I thought we raised you better than this.
I raised what is happening? This went off the rails quick. Just talk about why the
Either
show's
way.
good, you numpty.
Yeah, really enjoyed Marvelous Miss Maisel. Can't wait to dive into season 4 in the upcoming season 4. It's another show that is similar to Ted Lasso. I think it doesn't quite have as much depth and character change because it is a lot more centrally focused. It has great comedy. It has really good character development between the probably like 6 to 8 mainer characters. Um, it's always a really good ride. The jokes that I don't know who they hire on as comedy writers for her bits, but they are
Just killing
amazingly
it.
good. Oh yeah, it's like there are compilations of her jokes on YouTube, and they're as good as many specials that I watch. I know they're old
Wow.
timey. I barely get half the references when there are any, but it's just
Good comedy
the
is good
way they
comedy.
set them up. Yeah, turns out great actresses, when given the lines, make great comedians. So, or portray comedians great. I don't know. Either way, highly recommend. It's kind of the same ballpark. So if you run out of Ted Lasso, which is pretty easy to do, as there's only 2 seasons at like
Like what?
10 episodes a piece,
That's
3 hours and 4. I think you get
200.
7 hours of Ted Lasso, and then you run out.
I say you get 400-ish minutes, so 6-ish hours, 7 hours.
Yeah, nearly 7 hours. The second season's a little longer than the first. A lot of
Okay.
the episodes are like more like 40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
But after you run out of that, I would recommend, if you're in for more of that, Marvelous Miss Maisel is a pretty good follow up. Got a lot of great. It's got that ennui feeling that Ted Lasso has from being like across the pond, but it's, instead of being across the pond, it's set back in time. But it's the same kind of like a home that you've never been to, but feels like you should have been, sort of vibe, where you're like, oh, this is nice.
This
It's
is
like
pleasant.
that. Yeah, it's got that kind of vibe for me. Yeah. So that's definitely my rec of the week.
Your rec of the week.
What about you? What you reckon?
I'm going swinging far left here off of those two shows because I'm wrecking Witcher. Because I just got off watching the second season and I enjoyed it immensely. It is admittedly you're not looking highbrow. Like you're looking for a fantasy wrong. That's what you're here for.
So if you're looking for something less than comfy and more bloody,
Oh yeah, 100%. I like the second season a lot more than the first because it's a lot less convoluted. The first season does some weird timey-wimey stuff where it's showing you 3 stories kind of at once that slowly collide, and they're not all at the same time, which is a little wonky. But the second season is a lot more streamlined. It follows a much more linear narrative, so you don't feel
nice.
kind of jumped around.
Yeah, because the first one ping-ponged in time a lot, which I
Yeah.
think it sounded like, from what I heard from reviews and talking to other people, that was kind of like a bit of a bridge too far for them. Was that it was like, wait, which year are we in? You know, when is this? Because The Witcher, played by Henry Cavill, is pretty timeless. He looks the same because of being a Witcher, basically.
Yeah, because
And so,
lives forever, essentially.
yeah. So it's really hard to know what time it is. Where every other actor, has aged differently for the most part. Some of
Yeah.
them, it's like, oh, I haven't seen you in 10 years. It's like, oh, it's been 10 years, and so that was kind of hard for a lot of viewers. But it
Yeah.
sounds like we're all in one time period, just in three different zones. All
Correct.
like Game of Thrones or
Yeah.
any kind of meal piece crew like that.
But the one thing they do, there's a few things they do I think really well in the show. I think one of them is set and like setting. Like they do a lot of dope kind of. Think medieval Europe. You get a lot of those crazy, stone castles. You get a lot of those kind of smaller villages, giant stone cities. Like
Yeah, the set design is definitely
set design is
impeccable.
dope. But they did, in kind of a behind the scenes, they talk about one place they use, which is like this witch fortress called Aretusa, and it is very otherworldly. It's like it almost looks like something out of StarCraft, for lack of a better so it looks like something the Protoss
Witches
might
from
have
outer
made.
space.
Yeah, it doesn't follow regular building conventions off of everything else. So it's just very other. It's like
That's really cool. I mean, that makes sense given the who resides there, right?
yeah, and that's kind of the point. Is like they're just very set apart. And other thing that just absolutely crushed, especially this season, I think the season's way better, is their monster design. Monster design is just baller, and what's alarming is how much of it is practical effect too.
It is interesting how much that is a relative mainstay in output.
Yeah,
Like a good creature usually is more practical than it is digital. So much of the time, it seems like when we like hear and look into film and like movies and TV shows, that's like, oh, that's practical. It's like, well, that makes sense why the actor was so able to, show their fear or run away from it or interact with it so well.
Yeah.
It's like it's practical. It's so hard to interact with something that is
intangible.
yeah, non-existent in their
Yeah.
physical realm.
And
But
they do, on top of it being a lot of practical, they do some pretty rough stunts. Like they just toss people around sets. Like they just, there's a few behind the scenes. They like just are yoinking people like on winches and just slam it into the ground and stuff. It's like, oh sweet God.
just getting that old yeet.
Yeah, just maximum yeet all the time.
They had their can of maximum yeet in the morning. They were ready to rock.
Exactly. But yeah, it kind of inspired the idea. I'm like, so I think my favorite monster out of this season for sure is this almost centipede looking tree monster. Yeah, oh yeah, awful. It's heinous. Love it. Take it back. But it's
Thanks, I hate it, and I love it?
exactly. Just thanks. I hate it. It's got like this thing like a goat head with like the horns, and on top of this like giant centipede body that's made of wood with these crazy like bladed legs that it runs on. It's crazy. It's awesome. Love it. It needs to die.
And Geralt from Rivia is here to do it.
And we've got claymores just for this. I think he's actually using a bastard sword, but never mind. Maybe.
All right,
maybe
so
a sword. I don't know.
what does the creature have an actual name so we can look it up?
No, it's just some mutated monster.
Centipede monster, Witcher season 2. Hey, it looks like if you type in, yep, it's called the Myriapod, Myriapod. Or just if you type in centipede monster Witcher season 2, you'll get to where
it gets there.
You'll pick up what he's putting down pretty. Fuck! I'm not even watching the video, but these pictures are unsettling. Whoo boy!
Yeah, no, it's terrific. It's great. I hate it. Take it back.
Make it stop.
Yeah, I think. And one of the interesting things is a lot of the monsters in The Witcher, a lot of them have basis in a lot of mythologies around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like apparently in Japan, there's this myth about a giant centipede that breathes poison. like called the Mukage centipede, I think. And that is actually a type of centipede now, which is probably pretty poisonous. They're not like the size of an actual mountain, but they are large.
Well, thanks, Japan. I don't need to visit.
Yeah, thank you, Japan.
Fuck you guys.
So what kind of monsters?
Did you ever hold on real quick before
quick.
we go on to the next one? Did you ever play Witcher?
Not really.
Okay.
It's something I've seen a little bit played of, and Artemis has played a bit. My wife. I've kind of watched over her shoulder, which also kudos to Henry Cavill. His version of Geralt is like verbatim from the games. I don't think if you put a blindfold on, you couldn't tell which is which by voice.
Yeah.
It's uncanny.
He is committed to the craft, and is also a huge lover of the game and source material. He read the books, played the game. That definitely they got the best. Like
they have the best nerd.
There cannot be a, if this series gets canceled, moves on, there should never be a remake of the show, because unless there are more books and they want to bring those to screen, because they're never going to get.
They're never getting a better Geralt.
No, it's not going to happen. There's going to be no actor that is devoted to this role as Henry Cavill is. It's not humanly possible.
No, not a chance. God bless Henry Cavill. He's a gigantic nerd.
Yeah, much respect. Nerd up.
Man's a treasure. So outside of horrifying myropods, because I know that's now your favorite, Isaac.
Sleep. Why can't I?
What kind of monsters appeal to you in movies?
One of the first monsters I remember, and it's a movie that you watched recently, is The Thing, a la John Carpenter, and that one is one of my favorite ones. If not just because the practical effects and the way they did it, it's also just so terrifying.
Oh yeah.
And it has spawned an awesome subreddit that if anybody hasn't checked out, I'm sorry, John, would highly recommend if sleeping is not a big priority for you.
Or just surprise thing.
So, yeah, it's The Thing a la if Garfield was The Thing. I don't know how this exists or why, but this is one of the many reasons I love the internet, is because somebody made a subreddit that is not that small anymore.
I've actually seen pictures from that. It's so weird.
It is disturbing and bizarre, but it's just The Thing if it was in the Garfield universe, which has also spawned some other ones. There's one that is, somebody made a whole hand-drawn comic on there of if Patrick from SpongeBob was The Thing, and somebody made I think 50 to 60 page comic.
God.
Where Patrick is The Thing, but in Bikini Bottom, and it is
oh my god,
so weird and messed up and that's awesome. Yeah, I would highly recommend looking that up if you want something to just rack your brain. But I think that's one of the first ones that I can really remember that I enjoy, just because of the terror it invokes. Because it's it could be anybody, and so that kind of anxiety and that fear just slithers up your spine and makes your eyes go darting side to side until they roll around the back of your head. But also then the monster when it comes out is also truly terrifying. So you never get a moment of rest, because it's either dealing with something horrifying or fearing that it's in the room with you and you can't tell the difference.
That distrust and paranoia that's coming with.
Yeah. That is definitely the first one I can think of.
Gotta toss up another terrific classic monster. We gotta throw in xenomorphs.
Oh yeah.
Who
doesn't love a mouth and a mouth?
Yeah, and that's so apparently on Making Alien, Ridley Scott asked a number of psychologists how do I make it frightening? They're just make it unpredictable, make it something we can't wrap our head around. And so it just keeps being weirder and weirder and weirder. So it's so when you just got it figured out, no, you don't. You don't know shit. So yeah, it's got a mouth in its mouth.
It doesn't need to breathe.
It can survive the void of space. Its blood is acid. You think you hurt it? You're hurting yourself. Yeah, and so there's just always one more twist to the damn xenomorph the whole time. You're never safe.
They also did. I think Alien is also the tenet of good monster showing, not only good monster making, because they did it perfect in that one, and they did it perfect in Jaws. Its screen time is
It's
epidemically
very
low.
low.
It's like sub 10 minutes, I think. Actual amount of screen time, it's so low,
Yeah.
and like the amount of time they wait until you actually see it is so low, and it just scares the shit out of you because humans are only afraid. It's why humans are scared of the dark, right? It's because you don't know what's out there. So when
Uh-huh.
you don't know what's hunting you and you don't know what's killing you,
Yeah.
your brain conjures up an image far greater than could ever truly exist.
Yeah.
It's so perfect in that creation. Um, Trying to think. Do you have any other ones while I ponder? 'Cause I'm not a big monster movie guy, so I have to kind of reach back into the vaults of my brain.
Um, this one's a little bit. This is a little bit weird, but I do love the There's kind of two monster-ish things that I love from The Expanse, actually. Um,
As long as you don't spoil it.
no. Um, I mean, this shows up pretty early. So, one of them is called they call it the proto-molecule. And the TLDR is that it's this alien molecule that hijacks organic matter. And so it gets introduced to people, and they start, like... They basically dissolve into, like... They turn into zombies, they start vomiting brown goo, and kind of merging other people into, like, organic machinery. And the more people that get
You
involved,
had me
the more
at organic
complicated
machinery.
Well, at one point, it starts flying a space station that's like built into a giant rock. It just starts flying it through
As it
space
can.
casually. Like, and there's a guy who's standing on it, and he's like, I don't feel that I'm moving, which means it can go a lot faster. Because, like, normally in space flight, in the series, when you want to pick up the pace, you got to experience G-force. Like, you got to do a hard burn to get going, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's not feeling it, and the other ship trying to chase him is pulling 6 Gs trying to keep up. Which that hurts. That's what pilots get when they're doing, like, stunts. They do, like, 6 to 8 Gs.
Yeah.
So just being under that is brutal on your body.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
he's walking around on the surface of this, like, space station going, yeah, I don't feel a damn thing. Yeah, the protomolecule's frightening. And then there's kind of... I don't want to... That one's too spoilery. I can't talk about it. But I can absolutely talk about protomolecule, because that's pretty early. And...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still... And to their credit, for the creators of the Expanse show, it is super unsettling to look at. Which is exactly how I wanted it to look. It's all this weird bone growth and almost like crustacean shells being made out of people. It's great. Thanks. I hate it.
Okay, so I'm digging around the internet to try to remember what I forgot. So for absurd, and
Yeah.
it barely counts as a creature, but these couple of these are just they're still
They're
awesome.
too good, sure.
Tremors,
Oh,
the
graboids.
worms, the graboids, yeah, from Tremors, is tremendous. They make sense, the following of movements you have to stay still, which is like terrifying. It like to
Sure.
to not be able to move and like get got if you move and all that shit is great. It follows a very simple set of rules. Like they find cool ways to beat them. Love it. Another one that's just ridiculous is was it Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors? Feed me, Seymour.
Yeah, like Audrey 2 or something.
Yeah, Audrey too. I'm not a fan of picking monsters that exist in real life, so I'm going past like technically they existed, like the velociraptors from Jurassic Park,
Sure.
the crocodile from Lake Placid, which, holy shit, that's like quasi based on a real thing.
Yeah,
There's, I think
crocodile's
it's,
scurry.
well, that too, but there is I think it's like 500-pound crocodile that's in Tasmania or something like that.
Just kicking it.
That is eaten like 400 people or something. Like it's got a freaking
body count.
It has a body count, and they've sent people and tried to kill it, and it's just like, nope. It's like, all right, that's not something I want to put on a monster list.
Stop hunting the dinosaur.
Don't hunt dinosaurs. Haven't you watched Jurassic Park? It don't work. One that scares the shit out of me, and I'm curious to see if you think this is actually technically a monster or not, is does it count as a monster?
Kinda. I mean, he's more humanoid than I prefer my monsters to be, but he's absolutely like monstrous. Like, he's not like a human, clearly. Like he is as much kind of a monster. He does get weird and creepy with his anatomy. But I guess when I think kind of monster, I think, you know, your crazy quadrupeds and weird screechy bat thing.
Yeah,
you know.
I think I'm on the same page. I was looking through these lists and seeing Predator, and I don't really consider Predator that much of a monster either.
They're too sentient. Like, they're too intelligent. Yeah. I guess I think of monsters as like animals, not something that could pose as a person I could have a conversation with. I can't reason with. Yeah. I can't reason
therefore,
with raptors.
does Godzilla and Kong not make the monster list for you, or do they not quantify as monsters?
No, they do. We got to give a shout to Mac Daddy of Monsters and Godzilla. He is the king, after all.
King of monsters.
Yeah. I guess I gotta think like kaiju in their own subset, but absolutely a monster. So
yeah.
I actually still like the more modern one as much as the movie
Pacific Rim.
As much as the movies have done like some weird choices. Personally, like King of Monsters, half the time you cannot look at the screen.
Why is that?
Because you'd have an epileptic seizure.
Okay.
Yeah, every time they bring Ghidorah on screen in King of Monsters,
they should start playing.
It's hard to look at. Like, it's the only...
It's Godzilla!
Yeah, seriously, just bust out the glow sticks. I'm not saying do drugs, kids, but... it's the only movie I've seen that's hard to look at. Like, for extended periods of time, too. It's not like a couple seconds where it's bright flashes and it's over. It's like, no, he's been on screen for like 5 minutes just blowing shit up. Cool.
There's a movie that you're reminding me of, and I'm having to look it up. Hold on. What's it called? Damn it, it's like a one-word name. It's a movie that came out recently where a bunch of people are stuck in like this house or this dance floor. I think they're drugged and they have to dance to stay alive so that they don't die. It was like a pretty big movie. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
It's a dumb premise.
Apparently it was really good, but also had the same kind of problem of just like, if you're prone to seizures, you can just never see this film. It'll kill you. Because it's just like an hour and a half of like a drug-fueled dance sequence. Another one that's kind of like that is Into the Void, where a guy, I believe, is taken drugs, had drugs, is running from the law, but it's done like POV through dance clubs in like Japan or France or something like that. It's just like, yeah, you're just going to have an epilepsy.
You're going to have a bad time if you have epilepsy.
Yeah. There are certain people that this movie is, I believe, in front of a couple of those. It doesn't sound like King of the Monsters was, although I think they put it retroactively. In front of the other two, I think there was a warning before the movie. It's like, if flashing lights will bother you or something like that, you should leave. Like, this movie will cause you, dire
distress.
consequences. Yeah. Anywho.
Yeah.
Now that we've deviated far.
Last comment on Godzilla. The Godzilla vs. Kong, I thought was going to be stupid. I actually really liked it. It's pretty fun.
It had monsters they mashed.
Yeah, they finally found the right amount of good visibility and just letting monsters beat the crap out of each other, which is all the audience wanted.
Yeah, that's all we came here for.
Yeah, that's all we wanted.
They really could. I hope somebody's made an edit that is just none of the talking, all of the like, whoa.
Exactly.
It's like that's all people came there for. Nobody's like, oh, he's got a backstory and kids, and nobody wants that.
No one cares.
You can cut the movie. I'm kind of surprised that they hired any actors. Like you could have had just like rando Calrissian rocking the Casbah, just like
it's just some people they paid nothing for to come in, say a few lines of like quick setup, and call it a day. Like
that would have been kind of better. It's just all extras occasionally in the background, like getting like groceries and getting stepped on or shit like that. Like take a moment from the action where they're like, "Oh, it's safe. I needed milk today," and it's like awesome. And back to the action. It's like there wasn't enough time for a pee break. That's what the people want. Give them what they want. Stop this like every movie has to have a story. Some of them don't. It's fine.
The first Godzilla movie, I can't believe they fucking hired Bryan Cranston. Also, they advertised like Bryan Cranston's the lead, and he's dead in 40 minutes.
I think you just told the reason why. It's like they put the name on the front.
Absolutely.
They apparently thought they needed a draw for a Godzilla or a Godzilla movie. It's like kind of don't, but they thought they did.
And it's like, hey, look, we've got
the
Godzilla
research shows,
and these really baller computers that make him look awesome. Like, all right, cool, sold. Like, stop pitching. I'm buying. I'll go watch him kill stuff. Excellent.
Speaking of pitching, let's see if you buy this. Since we've been talking about monsters, an idea of mine that has been rumbling around as of recently is redoing the Grimm fairy tales as an anthology TV show.
How grim are we talking here?
Put it back in the graveyard, Grimm.
Oh boy.
Bury it underneath the floorboards. Oh yeah. And the best part is it writes itself. You don't have to like rewrite history to make this shit up. Yeah, the Grimm fairy tales are all bananas. And the fact that as many of them have been turned into Disney movies as they have is just psychotic. Because it's just the only reason that they've been rewritten is because they've been classics the whole entire time. It's like kind of the same reason that they used Bryan Cranston in that movie. It's just the title that they wanted. Like for instance, in Cinderella's like she's had more than one stepmother, and maybe she had a hand in undoing her own mother because she definitely killed her first stepmother so that her dad could marry, of all people, their housekeeper. And in the end of Cinderella, when she finally gets the happily ever after, just before that, if you'll recall in the Disney movie, they're like, let me, like
trying on the slippers. Yeah.
Her two older sisters try on slippers.
Get the butter,
by the way,
we'll make them fit.
I do believe there's more. Yes, they do get a knife and try to make them fit. Oh. They start lopping off toes in the back of their heel, which is just nutter butters. It's also
my foot
the
just started
prince
twitching. Like sympathetically, like, oh Jesus, ow!
The princess right there is my favorite part. Like he's gonna be like, oh yeah, it fits. This is the one. It's like, dude, he just watched you trim off your toes.
There's a blood trail leading up to the door. Like, come on.
Yeah, doing it right in front of him. It's like, yeah, he's gonna be like, I remember having toes last night. Like I could see through the shoe.
I don't remember slipping in blood while we danced.
Yeah, Sleeping Beauty's lovely ending is a lot less lovely when you realize that she doesn't get waken up by a kiss, but rather two children that she didn't know she was pregnant with because she was impregnated while she was sleeping. Believe there's a couple hashtags in there that need to be noted, like, rape is rape, and you got to be able to say yes for it to count as not a no.
I was going to say, there is an implied consent for that.
Yeah.
You're not giving CPR, asshole.
Your Honor, she was sleeping. She clearly wanted it. But so that one might have to get X'd out. But I mean, that's how crazy we're talking here. You've got Snow White, where at the end, instead of the old cackling bitch meeting her end via her own, crooked ways or falling off a cliff, she is punished by Snow White to wear red hot iron shoes and dance until she falls over dead. Like,
that's weirdly creative. That's
yeah,
kind of chilling that it comes from Snow. Like, Snow White just has that on the spot, and it's just like, all right, let's make this happen.
I know.
Yeah,
like,
dude, what have you been doing in that cabin?
It brings a new kind of mental picture to that line, dance till you're dead. In the end of Little Mermaid, she doesn't get Eric. Eric just decides to marry a different woman. And then the Little Mermaid throws herself into the sea where her body dissolves into sea foam. The end.
What?
The fuck? Can't have a. Might as well turn myself into powder.
Jesus Christ.
What? Yeah, it
seems like an extreme response.
Yeah.
Also, why does she turn into sea foam?
Cause reasons.
Because reasons. Yeah, good enough, I guess. Jesus.
In the end of Hansel and Gretel, they burn the witch alive in her own oven.
I knew that.
Deserved, but still horrifying.
Yeah. Those kids are like, what, 10?
Yeah.
They just killed a bitch.
They straight murked a woman.
Yeah, they straight murdered a woman.
Great. I mean, that one's excusable, but still dark as hell.
Dark as hell. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, each one of these, you give it like an NR rating, minus the Sleeping Beauty and that horror rape story.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's an HBO easy series. Like, all the writing's done. All you got to do is take out the thous and put in the U.
Yeah, just modernize the language a tit.
Yeah, modern language, and you've got yourself a hit, sweetheart.
Jesus. God, what were people eating back then? Smoking, drinking. Oh, God.
The best part I love about this is this was stories to tell your children to keep them in line, and yet they end like nightmare fuel that you're just going to be kept up as a parent, just like rocking your kid back to sleep because they can't stop drawing murder backwards on the wall. Like, red ram! Just like, all right, Timmy, let me cradle you for a bit. Give you some alcohol because the water's still too dirty. Like, what? Like, what was going on back then? Were parents just like aggressively hitting their kids into a coma so they were allowed to go back to bed? That's a great question.
Because depending, I actually might have a minor explanation.
First published on December 20th, 1812. It's far more modern than I anticipated.
Yeah, that's kind of chilling. But, actually, no. Because coffee would have started showing up. Huh. That's like in that weird transition where the drink of the time wasn't quite coffee yet, or like coffee wasn't the biggest yet. So there's still a lot of like alcohol being consumed. So maybe you're getting a weird
maybe
mix.
that's how the kids were able to go to sleep after hearing these horror stories right before bed. Yeah, just have some gin to make the memories go away.
I just stuff it down with some brown. I love Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Shit's so good.
So that's my pitch of the week. What wares do you have to sell us on, my good man?
So the weird brain baby that we've got rocking around. And I have no clue what I'd be doing with it. But I like the idea of a kind of unlikely hitman, or like an unlikely assassin being effectively pulled out of cold storage, quote unquote, and just kind of some scrappy drug addict just like living in some shite apartment. I don't know, I guess there's always this kind of, there's an often established thing that, like, if you're fighting, you're put together to a degree. That makes sense. Like, at least physically, you look the part.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like, but if you have someone who's just this emaciated heroin addict, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like, he's still got the goods, and he's still trained. It's like, yeah, maybe he's not, like, super strong, but he's done it enough that he is super dangerous in various creative ways. Like, I don't know that I necessarily want to follow his perspective, but I feel like he'd be a fun, almost antagonist or like hazard to ride around.
Mm.
It's like you, especially like on a first kind of confrontation with someone, you would not expect him to just be like, "Oh, he knows how to cut you to ribbons."
Mm-hmm.
Like, and because he is super, small and non-threatening because he's just malnourished, you don't think anything of him walking next to you. Like, you're not threatened. You like shade it out maybe a little bit because he looks like a hobo. But that's
So
it.
you're reminding me of this interesting notion that I've brought up in way too many conversations over the course of these last year or so,
Mm-hmm.
which is I remember watching this thing on the History Channel when I think it was like uh, the Medici were merchants in Italy, right? I'm getting that correct.
I believe so.
So I think this is what this is about. It's been ages ago, but I remember this father telling his like up and coming merchant son some tricks of the trade, and one of them was when traveling, don't ride the beast of burden, walk in front of it, have an old man sitting on its back so as to appear not rich so you won't be robbed. And like so it's this idea of like kind of like hiding yourself in plain sight with garb that people associate with X.
Yeah.
And so it kind of sounds like the same for you of just like like just have not that it's necessarily part of a costume, but like part of
It's not what
like
you
the guy's
assume
able
they're
to like
capable of or what they're doing.
I actually had an interesting idea about I didn't know what to do with this, so take this as you will. But it's always interesting to me that like when you look at hitmen for the most part, it's always guns a-blazing, occasionally the odd poison dart or whatever like that. But it's always like, yeah, they got killed. Like they were clearly assassinated.
Yeah.
It would have been kind of interesting. I'd love to see a movie. And there was an episode of Blacklist before it got really weird. So it must have been like season 1 or season 2.
Probably.
And where one of the guys is an assassin who makes it look like an accident. And that idea, whether it be a hero or a villain, that they don't leave like a noticeable trail.
Yeah.
That it's not, it's like, oh, household cleaning agents, they overdosed on pills, they did this and that. It's like, yeah, just make those assassination attempts. Like, make those actually assassinations. It's like,
so, I'm sorry, I've got a literary reference to add to that.
Sweet.
In the book Zero Game by Meltzer, one of the antagonists is an assassin who basically makes like a device to induce a heart attack.
Sick.
That's pretty nasty. It's just like this little black box with like prongs on it like a taser. And he's basically just juiced it high as hell, so you just go and just short your heart. It's like,
And it doesn't like leave a mark or anything like that?
not like super detectable, no.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's like, oh dear God. Yeah, like at one point he chases the main character who tries to do all the right things for running, like he thinks he's like lost him and the dude just walks around the corner like, yeah, I knew where you're going. Like just shaking his head like disappointed, like, come on, you've gotta do better. So the main character's like, oh fuck, just bolts him, like thinks for a second, he's like, gotta do the exact opposite, this feels stupid, and he runs into a basement and hides. And he's just like, please don't walk down the stairs, I don't have an out.
That's really cool. That's a really cool character decisions on both sides. Like, you don't follow them, you just go where they're going, and then like, okay, if this guy's anticipating my moves, I think there was like I remember hearing some colleagues talk about reading some of the Star Wars comics, and one of the characters gets taught by Boba Fett how to fight against
Jedi?
yeah, fight against Jedi, thank you. And he's like, you need to make your moves erratic. They cannot follow a path because so much of, apparently in canon, following the Force is just kind of learning the way humans do things.
Yeah, following
as
a flow.
Yeah. And so like when you do things that make no sense or are kind of weird or random, it's like that's how you get an edge on them because apparently Boba is actually like pretty good at beating Jedi. And so it was like, oh, that's so cool. Like that idea of, and like, that's like, I think we've talked about this before, not on the podcast, but about Deadpool. Like one of the reasons that he is actually efficient and not just a nutso case, or what reason him being a nutso case plays into his
Works
efficiency
into
as
it.
a mercenary, is he just does random ass shit. He's very intelligent, but he does random ass shit. So it's a lot of very difficult for a lot of people to fight
Yeah.
against him because he's just
Do you
super
know
random.
who chess masters tend to practice against?
Uh, Homeless guys, right?
Novices.
Really?
Yes. Because
Because
because they are not predictable. Because they do not
oh, that's
because they
so
don't
cool.
know the quote unquote rules of how to play.
That's awesome.
At least
Oh man.
that is what I've heard. I would double check that for anybody at home. But and
I know that the current chess master, the Norwegian kid, Magnus Carlsen,
yeah.
likes to, when practicing and testing and stuff like that, he likes to open with erratic and different moves to like see if he can get out of scenarios or if it opens up a new line that he would never have perceived.
Hmm.
So I think that idea definitely holds clarity. Anyway, with that chess biz aside, I believe that is our episode. Thank you for tuning in. And if you like this, please feel free to
Like,
comment,
share.
subscribe.
And don't forget, new episodes of Super Pros Bros come out the first and third Saturday of every month.
Bye.